Oh, hey, my name is Willie Lawson, and this is the Saxophone Factory. I trust that you are well um, hearing this. I thought that I would do a video and answer some questions that I've gotten in the comments. And because usually, if one person has a question, it's normally affecting a lot more than that one person. You found out to be true, and what you do too. I got this question from Harold. Harold said, it took me several practices to get number two in the book to a point that is acceptable. Number three was pretty good. He said that I mentioned to allow the saxophone to do the work instead of squeezing the embouchure because you don't want to bite. Uh, he says he can't seem to get the notes to come out without squeezing. Uh, he was told that his instrument was quite restrictive. Well, most of our instruments are open pipes. They're just open pipes, um, hardly restrictive. There are, and I answered his question in the comments, so you can see that. It is on Rubank Elementary Method for Saxophone Lesson 5. But I'm going to address it here. There could be actually three things going on. The first thing is to make sure that your instrument is in good repair. Make sure that your instrument is in good repair. A leaky pad can just make you nuts, and especially in the beginning stages of your playing, cause you to do a lot of bad habits, a lot of harsh squeezing of the fingers and manipulating improperly of the air. So try to make sure that your instrument is in good repair. And none of the pads are leaking, that none of the keys are bent, that kind of thing. First of all, because a lot of times it's not you, it's the instrument. And I have over my career, I always tell my students, I think I fixed more horns than I've listened to, but that can solve a multitude of problems. Second, make sure that your reed placement on the mouthpiece is in the right place. I know I hear a bunch of different things. I personally teach that make sure that the reed is flush with the top of the mouthpiece. So if you were holding the mouthpiece and you could run your finger over the tip, you could touch the tip of the reed and the tip of the mouthpiece at the same time. And they're even. So when you turn the mouthpiece, you don't see the reeds peeking out over, and you don't see it underneath the tip of the mouthpiece either. If this is the tip of the mouthpiece, you don't want it to be under either. You want them to be even. That's how I teach it, and that's how I play. Um, Either of those things, up or under, over or under, what they'll do sometimes, they'll make the reed harder to play. Um, Third, make sure that you're not playing a reed that's too hard. You know, we get to people who think that the better player you are, the harder reed you play on, and that's not it at all. That's not it at all. Um, the strength of your reed has to do with the tip opening of your mouthpiece. Generally speaking, depending on what kind of sound you want to get, the larger the tip opening, that means the distance between the tip of the mouthpiece and where the reed comes out. The larger that tip opening is, the softer reed you want to use, the lower number. And the closer that tip opening is, the harder reed, or the larger number. And this is why. Picture this being the tip opening. The reed's down here. The tip the tip of the mouthpiece is here. The reed has to travel that distance and hit the tip opening, the mouthpiece tip, to make the sound. If it's a large tip opening, it's a long journey to move as quickly as it does. If the reed is super stiff, then it's hard to take that, to push the air enough to make it make a decent sound. If you have a really big tip opening, if the reed is softer, a smaller number, then it's easier for her to make that trip. That makes sense. I thought, and then and the reverse is true as well. So first check to make sure that your instrument is in good repair first. Then make sure that there is good reed placement, and then try a different strength reed. I always have my students start on a 2.5. It's kind of the middle ground. Reeds can start off at a half, or go all the way to 5 or 5+. I always start kind of in the middle, and depending on the kind of sound we're trying to get and the kind of mouthpiece we have, then we make that adjustment one way or the other. Don't let anybody tell you that all the good players play on really hard reeds. I hear that from my students who have teachers on saxophone and clarinet, and neither of those things is true. Neither of those things is true. The strength of the reed depends on not the player or how long they've been playing, but the type of mouthpiece they have. All right, Harold, I hope that answered your question. I kind of went on and on about it because it's one of those things that we see a lot. Let me see if I can get my mouse to work. I got so much crap on this desk. I'm so glad y'all can't see it. I might even be embarrassed by it. There's so much stuff. All right. Zabel writes, I've been playing for 3 years. I find note lengths and timing a problem. I have just bought the Rubeck Elementary and Intermediate books. He asks, should he start from the elementary book? Yes. And I'll tell you why. Because what we're going to add into the mix is the thing that everybody hates, including me, the metronome. Some metronome. Whether you buy an electronic metronome, whether you have the wind-up type, or whether you just go to Google and type in metronome online. Metronome. Because if we can't sync in to the constant click of a metronome, there's almost no way that we can sync in to other music with other musicians. So a great way to practice it, and especially if you've been playing a while, is to go back to the elementary book and use a metronome, making sure you're playing those whole notes 4 counts, making sure that you're playing those quarter notes right on beat. Simple rhythms that probably at 3 years of age you can already play. Even 8th note rhythms. Da, da, dee, da, 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 making sure that you're right on target. Now, the reality of it is that sometimes these metronomes aren't loud enough. So you might have to wear some earplugs or some headphones to hear the metronome and you. But that's really a good idea. That will lock you in. So often when players, and it's because when players don't get the physical feedback like a drummer would of something hitting something and feeling that physical feedback, that feedback, or the piano player getting that physical feedback, bass player, physical feedback, guitar player, physical feedback on rhythm, when players are a little lax in that area. The idea is that everybody in the ensemble is responsible for the tempo. Everybody, not just the drummers, not just the bass player. Everybody's responsible for the tempo. So we have to practice it a little differently. A little bit more cerebral for us and a little less physical. So get yourself a metronome, go back to the elementary book and work from there. I'm sure you will find all sorts of frustration, but eventually you'll find great success. Let's see here. Azaria says that they won first place in their marching band competition, was successful. I appreciate that. Congratulations. Congratulations. Lynn Woods writes, can I recommend a classical technical solo for clarinetist who is at the point in the book? And this person is in the intermediate clarinet book, lesson 3. I like if you're looking for a technical clarinet solo, get the third movement of the Mozart concerto. I know Mozart concerto sounds like whoa, because you're going to play it slower to start with. And it's in a great key, so you don't have to worry about keys or key signatures. But that, as you use a metronome and you speed it up, will develop some fantastic technique. Thanks, Lynn, for your question. Appreciate it. Let's see here. What else we got? We got time for a couple more, I think. Um, all right. All right. Here's something that was the biggest video on this channel had to do with the concept of a classical embouchure and a jazz embouchure. There really isn't any such thing. Your embouchure is going to be a lot like the Popeil oven. You're going to set it and forget it. Now, are there things that you need to adjust to play in a jazz style sometimes, like subtones and that kind of thing? Or there's voicings that are going to be different to play out, to play altissimo on a certain mouthpiece? Yes. And those adjustments are going to be made. But generally speaking, you will have a bass embouchure that will include all the same stuff you always do. Okay. Whether you're playing on a rasher or you're playing on a Dukoff. Yes, those are, or a Lakey. Those are opposite end of the spectrum. But there are basic things you're going to do. You're going to make sure that bottom lip is covered. You're going to make sure those teeth are on the top. You're going to pull those corners forward. And you are going to do that now. Again, because everybody's mouth is different, everybody's physiology is different. Everyone's going to have little adjustments that when you look at them, you're going to look at their embouchure and go, looks a little weird to me. Everybody's teeth are in different places. Everybody's tongue is a different size. So you're going to see a lot of variation. But generally speaking, your bass embouchure is going to be the same. Generally speaking, okay. That answers the question. Now that doesn't that won't end the argument, but it does answer the question. All right, one of the first things we talked about, and I want to get this before we go. Should you play, if you play alto, should you play in front of you, or tenor even, in front of you or on the side? It doesn't matter. If you're playing tenor and your arms are super long and you can sit on the edge of the chair and reach comfortably in front of you without your right hand getting all weird, okay. I don't think that's very comfortable. I would much rather you play with it on the side, on your hip. I mean, on your thigh there, if you're a tenor player. Alto, it doesn't matter as long as you're not resting the horn on the chair and it's hanging from your neck strap. That's fine. It doesn't matter. As long and make sure that the mouthpiece is such that your head's not crooked. You're not playing like this. Bad for your neck, cuts off your air factory, all that stuff. Make sure that the mouthpiece is turned so your head is up and straight and in line with your body. Okay, and that there isn't any weird tension. All right, folks, you guys have been awesome supporting this channel. You've been amazing. We are very much on our way to 1,000 subscribers. We may even be looking at monetization if we get more hours viewed. If you have more questions, please write them in the comments. Send them to me, and we'll address them as things go. The future of the channel, well, I'm going to be playing more and more of these solos on for saxophone for younger players. so you can get an idea of how some of these things go and how they should be played. And that's important. I find that that's something lacking. There are lots of people playing the real hard stuff like the Glasnost concerto and the Creston concerto and sonata and that kind of thing. But there's hardly anybody playing chartreuse. There's hardly anybody who is above the age of 11 playing chartreuse. I just recorded that, and it's in the video I just did. You can check that out. But that might be something that a younger player might want to play as they're building their skills. So that's kind of what we're headed for a while. Are we going to get to the intermediate book? We might. We're definitely going to continue and finish the Lenny House Jazz Conceptions book. And anything else that you have for me, write down in the comments. Can't wait to hear from you. Again, my name is Willie Lawson, and this has been the Saxophone Factory. Until we see you again, keep practicing. See you when we see you.